Jai Hind, Brigadier Hemant Mahajan welcomes you to a Facebook Live. What we are going to talk today is many subjects, in fact, multiple subjects. First, we will talk about Pakistan being put in the grey list by United Nations Financial Action Task Force. What are the implications? How does Pakistan suffer and how does India gain? We will talk about these issues. Thereafter, we will talk about two more issues. One is that Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat has said that India must use disruptive technologies as far as the future warfare is concerned. What does it exactly mean and how will India be able to do it? We will talk about it. Next issue is Taliban, Pakistan, China, EITF, that is East Turkestan Independent Movement, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, all these issues connected together. Now the Taliban has been in power for nearly 2 months. What is the exact status there? What are the India's options there, and how is Pakistan benefiting, China benefiting, or India benefiting? The latest, as far as Taliban was concerned, was that last week they attacked a Gurudwara in Afghanistan and tried to scare the Sikhs there. Now the Sikhs in Afghanistan, whose number approximately maybe between 400 to 800, have only two options. One, either to get converted, secondly to get killed, or third is to come back to India. Let us hope that they remain safe and decide to come back to India, because as per the law which we have made some time back, CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act, in which we have made a rule that anybody, any minority which is persecuted in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, or in Bangladesh will be given India's citizenship. So if they come back fast, they will be saved. The next issue is Pakistan being helped because of Taliban coming to power? The most important issue is that the tribal areas of Pakistan, that is Waziristan, that is FATA, that is Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Baluchistan, the level of violence has definitely increased 2 or 3 folds after coming in power of Taliban. In fact, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, also called as Pakistani Taliban, has been emboldened because of power in Afghanistan being taken over by Afghani Taliban. Though Afghani Taliban and Pakistani Taliban are not directly related to each other, but they have a lot of similarities. Both are headed by Pathans or Pashtuns. Both want Pathans on either side of Durand line, that is the line, boundary line between Pakistan and Afghanistan, to get united and form a unified government. So therefore, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is against Pakistani army, which is against Pakistani government, has raised the level of violence, and lot of attacks have taken place in Pakistan, and a number of Pakistani soldiers and paramilitary forces have become casualties. Imran Khan, Pakistani Prime Minister, has appealed to them that they should talk. He will not punish them, etc. But there is no signs of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan toning down its rhetoric. It wants an independent state. That is very clear. Not only that, when Taliban took over power in Afghanistan, it was thought that China will immensely benefit because of it, because some armchair strategists had been talking about trillions of dollars of natural wealth that lay down the soil of Afghanistan. But this was actually a far-fetched kind of an assessment. Afghanistan was given undue importance by some armchair experts by saying that it's a very important country. It's a land bridge which joins Central Asian republics. Its location is strategic. Nothing like that. Afghanistan is a barren land. It has no natural resources or no natural resources that have been exploited up till now. If the natural resources were there, why didn't the Americans exploit it for those 28 years or 21 years when they were in power in Afghanistan? Why didn't the Russians exploit it when they were in power in Afghanistan for 10 years? Obviously, because exploitation was not easy. There were problems of security, there were problems of infrastructure, there were problems of getting technology inside. There were many problems which practically ensured that mineral wealth of Pakistan, of Afghanistan could not be exploited. Some people even talked about one belt, one road, starting from Pakistan, getting to via Peshawar, coming to Kabul, and from there going into Central Asian republics. I have said number of times that it is a white elephant. Pakistan's China-Pakistan economic corridor itself is a white elephant which has put both Pakistan and Chinese economy in trouble. Thereafter, extending it to Afghanistan, who has no economy, is going to create a further problem, and landlocked states of Central Asian republics doesn't give you as much adequate, let's say, options as far as the one belt, one road is concerned. So China has a very serious problem there. But the biggest serious problem which China faces is the rejuvenation of a group called EITF, East Turkestan Independent Movement. You must be aware that China has a province called Xinjiang in which there are 2 crore Uyghur Muslims, and they are not happy with China simply because the 2 millions of them have been put in reformatories, or in simple words, they have been put in jails. Lot of restrictions have been laid on the Uyghur Muslim minorities in China. Therefore, they are very unhappy, and the militant wing of Xinjiang province is EITN. What we must understand is that Xinjiang was never a part of China before 1949. It was a part of Turkestan. So therefore, this group has become active, and as per the latest media report, it is said that more than 200 terrorists of EITM are being trained in Afghanistan. In fact, Afghanistan now has become a training ground for ISIS. It has become a training ground for groups which are against China. It has become a training ground for groups which are against Pakistan, and of course it's the training ground for groups which are against India. The Al-Qaeda, the ISIS-K are the groups which are fighting for power there. In fact, in Afghanistan, more or less a civil war is going on between Taliban and ISIS-K. ISIS-K stands for ISIS Khorasan. Now this is going to be a long drawn affair. Violence is going to be a way of life. Economy of Afghanistan is in complete doldrums. So there are multiple problems which are there in Afghanistan, and Pakistan and China, instead of benefiting because of Afghanistan, have only lost hell of a lot, because there is absolutely no economic benefits that have accrued to them, no strategic benefits that have accrued to them. They have just not gained anything much because of various things. So therefore, all in all, the coming in power of Taliban has neither benefited Pakistan nor benefited China, and it is now both these countries are going to get sucked up in a quicksand called Afghanistan or Taliban. So there are problems all over. Now Pakistan has been put yesterday in the United Nations grey list. What does it mean? United Nations Financial Action Task Force is a body which keeps a watch on countries which supply economic aid to various terrorist groups which have been proscribed as terrorist group by the United Nations. Now Pakistan was supposed to be complying with 34 points. It is supposed to have complied with 30 points, but the most important 4 points that they have not complied with is proceeding against terrorists such as the Lashkar-e-Toiba, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Hizbul Mujahid, the leaders like Sayyid Salahuddin, Hafiz Saeed, etc. Pakistan has carried out no action. In fact, Pakistan has gained considerable expertise in trying to do a double crossing of the USA, the Western world, and the United Nations. It is managed not to get into the blacklist simply because of support of China. It thinks that it can keep on fooling the world, while it has really fooled the world that despite being in the grey list up till now, it still managed to help the the Talibanis in Afghanistan. The world just kept on looking the other way. It also ensured that Taliban was taken over by a set of people who are all proscribed terrorists by the United Nations. Even despite doing all this, Pakistan has still managed not to get converted from grey list into a black list. However, staying in the grey list itself causes lot of trouble to Pakistan simply because it ensures that world economic bodies such as the World Bank, such as the International Monetary Fund, such as the European Union will not provide aid to Pakistan directly. Not only Pakistan is not going to get any economic aid, but it is also going to be ensured that Americans will give them no aid, European Union will give them no aid, Chinese are not willing to give them any aid. So therefore there are problems on the economic front as far as Pakistan is concerned. Whether these economic problems will bring Pakistan to their knees, only time will tell, but Pakistan manages to extract some aid from the Organization of Islamic Nations. So this time also they are hoping for some aid from Saudi Arabia, from the other countries. Let us see as to how much aid will they be offering. But one thing is very, very clear, that Pakistan's economy, just like the Chinese economy, is in complete doldrums. I will repeat, Pakistan's economy is in complete doldrums. It is living only on foreign aid. It is simply, its inflation is one of the highest in the world. There are hardly any exports oblique imports worth the name. No foreign direct investment is coming to Pakistan. In fact, most of the rich Pakistanis are running away from Pakistan and going and settling in other countries. So therefore, there is a problem plethora as far as Pakistan is concerned. But it is still not willing to learn lessons. So we'll have to see what is going to happen next. But one thing is clear, that even the level of violence in Pakistan is increasing. Now let us come down to the next issue, that is liberation of Bangladesh in 1971. Recently there has been a lot of violence in Bangladesh against the Hindus. I had done 2 lives on these issues, and I will only briefly tell you that the Hindus, the Sikhs, the Jains, Buddhists, or call it the minorities, were approximately 24% in 1950 in then East Pakistan or present Bangladesh. They kept on getting reduced because lot of violence was carried out against these minorities. In 1971, when Bangladesh became independent in 1974, another census was carried out by Bangladesh. That time it was realized that the minorities in Bangladesh had reduced from 24% to approximately 14% in Bangladesh. That means only 14% of the Bangladesh population was Hindu, Jain, Buddha, etc. Now that was in 74. Today in 2021, what is the percentage of population? To put it very bluntly, it is now reduced to 8 or 9%. That means despite installing a friendly government in Bangladesh, the minority population there is decreased hell of a lot. It has come down to 8 or 9%, or in terms of physical census, it is approximately between 1 to 1.5 crores. And the recent violence against the Bangladeshi Hindus has created a lot of problem. There have been looting, there have been rapes, there have been mandirs being burnt. Of course, the Bangladesh government has acted promptly against it, and today's news talks about gives a news that the person who started this violence has been caught and he will be punished by the Bangladesh government. This is a good news. We must ensure that the minorities in Bangladesh are protected. So therefore, some experts now think whether liberation of Bangladesh was a good idea or should we have left it with Pakistan only. Liberation of Bangladesh was definitely a very good idea. It was one of the biggest military victory carried out, which the country sort of saw after independence and a new nation was born. Pakistan till then used to think that they are equal to India. Now that Pakistan has been split into two parts, or now Bangladesh has become an independent nation, Pakistan's military power, Pakistan's strategic aspects have definitely reduced. They are no more equal as far as India is concerned. Secondly, the threat from East Pakistan to Northeast India is now gone forever because of friendly governments in Bangladesh. There is going to be no military threat from Bangladesh. Not only that, Chinese threat to the Siliguri corridor, Bangladesh is going all out to help us in developing waterways, etc., via the Bangladesh rivers of Ganga, Meghna, Brahmaputra, etc. So that's a good news. Insurgent groups inside Northeast, which used to have their sanctuaries or bases in Bangladesh, now have been denied these bases. In fact, Bangladesh handed over most of these groups to India, and it doesn't give sanctuaries there at all. However, the problem that is still continuing is, despite all the strategic advantage that we have gained, two problems remain unsolved. One is illegal Bangladeshi migration takes place from the land border. Illegal Bangladesh migration into India takes place from the sea border. It is taking place hell of a lot in West Bengal, in Orissa, etc. Our coastal security requires a drastic improvement. The Navy, the Coast Guard, the police and the other agencies have to tighten up their monitoring of the borders, because if you see the local media in Orissa, West Bengal, etc., you will come to know that the coastal districts have been flooded now with Bangladesh. We just have to improve our coastal security on the eastern coast. The next issue is the minorities are still being troubled. So let us put some pressure on Bangladesh, both economic and otherwise, and ensure that these minorities get protected, because if they don't, then the remainder 1 or 1.5 crore Hindus will come back to India. So liberation of Bangladesh was definitely a good idea. The Bangladesh government also is trying to control radicalization in Bangladesh. That's a good news. Of course, they must ensure that organizations like Jamaat-e-Islami, etc., who are responsible for this violence, are punished adequately. I'm sure these things will happen. We have to keep on putting diplomatic pressure on Bangladesh to protect the minorities there. Now, I will stop here and try and take out one or two questions, if at all there are any. There's a lot of response I can find मी सावरकर बोलतो आहे, वंदे मातरम. जगजीत सिंग चौहान जी is saying Jai Hind. Kaustubh Masurkar is saying Jai Hind. Gaurav Koregaonkar is saying Jai Hind. Thanks a lot, all of you. Please, if you have liked this, try and share it with as many people as possible, and try and like it, try and put up your remarks, etc. I'll stop here just to remind you that we will again meet tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Till then, see you, bye bye, and best wishes.